And welcome back to The Way of the Wandering Wizard. I am Robert Andrew Meredith Kennedy, and I am a pure and open channel for the finest vibrations of divine love and light, made manifest here in service to Gaia and those who travel with her. Well, the first steps to recovery following an impact like that are always going to be little ones, and most of my steps were made in a hospital bed. They weren't steps at all. Having been delivered safe into the hands of my brother and been through my first big operation, they managed to save my leg. Apparently it was quite a large operation. They probably needed wellies, and I think I drained the blood blank. But I awoke in recovery, although I have no real memory of that, and then back to my room with my leg up on a little frame, or up on a little ramp, all neatly wrapped up in bandages. And apparently I had what's known as a tibial nail, effectively a giant surgical metal, highly expensive, Wolverine-like leg bone bolted onto the front of my shin, which would span the gap and allow my leg to heal. Obviously they'd had to do a bit of a clear out while they were in there. There was rather a lot of road that had gone in through the hole. Bits of bone, the usual gory stuff. But the recovery had gone well, and in the process of them moving, they've managed to relocate my hip, which made me a lot more comfortable. I was warned almost immediately not to sit up or try and move too much, because the hip was just backing. It wasn't held. So obviously, jumping for joy was not going to be an option. I'd agreed, or the anaesthetist had written me up for oxycodone, a powerful painkiller. Given that I would be going through multiple operations, it's what they deemed was best. So I arrived back on the ward with a nice driver, basically a giant syringe, full of the NHS's finest, and a button. Push the button, and small titrated amounts delivered to your bloodstream, and that's how we maintain our pain relief. And for the first day or so, I was drifting very well. My brother was in. My parents came in that night late. I have vague memory. A tearful reunion, to say the very least, highly emotional, as you can imagine. I'd been through a lot. I'd had a few accidents in the past, but nothing quite like this. I must have slept or drifted in and out that night, and the next day was pretty much a recovery day. I got a little bit to eat, but I was very drifty, as you can imagine. I was still on multiple drips, had lines going in all over the place, catheters. As you can imagine, I wasn't getting out of bed. So I laid there, doing my best to maintain some kind of connection to where I'd been, I suppose, in a very drifty state while I tried to manage the pain, assisted by the NHS's finest. They were drifty days. The ward came round, we had the ward visit, and the team were discussing the fact that now that the leg was stabilised, the next big job would be the hip. Various surgeons were discussed, one of which was in India and wouldn't be back for several days. Now again, soul planning, divine providence, the luck of the Kennedys. It just so happened that on that round was an old eminent surgeon, old school surgeon, who'd started his career in hips, who thankfully stepped forward and said that he would be more than willing to take on the challenge, and a gentle reminder that the guy who had took the guy who was the hip specialist was present. There was handy, eh? Well, scrubbed up, washed up, all my paperwork signed, and ready for the second of what was to become 4 operations. And as if on cue, with the dulcet tones of a power drill in the background, I underwent my hip operation. Sounded a bit like that, but probably with less petrol. And I woke up from another operation with basically a rather large set of padding, a drain in my hip, and a scar that runs pretty much from the top of my leg to the top of my bottom. Well, it would appear, with the sound effects kicking in from the background, now's as good a time to any to end day 2 of my journey. I will convene again when the world is a little quieter place. Thank you for listening. Blessed be.